Hi, I'm Sarah Tilley from Curious Maths. I'm a primary maths consultant based in London and I've been in education for over 20 years. I'm a huge fan of the build it, draw it, write it, say it approach to teaching mathematics. I think it's a really fantastic way to help children really understand the maths behind the kind of questions they're doing. And it's really engaging and purposeful, great for assessment and great for reasoning and mastery. So this is my third video in the series, so please check out my other two if you haven't seen them. And this video is going to focus on division with remainders, and I'm going to consider how you can use this approach to really exemplify what a remainder is and help children have better understanding. I hope you find it useful. Here are the national curriculum objectives in England for division with remainders. As you can see, it doesn't really get mentioned in the national curriculum until year 5, where they have to divide numbers up to 4 digits using the formal method of short division and interpret the remainders appropriately. So to be able to do that and to be able to use remainders as regrouping in short division, they need to do a bit of practice first and really understand what a remainder is. And that's what this video is all about. Thinking how you can help children really understand what a remainder is, so when the numbers get too big and too hard to visualise, they've got a hook. So what's the point of this brilliant approach? Well, it gives children a concrete experience, and by having this they can actually start to see the structure of division and see the remainder that they're dealing with. Because they are doing the same thing lots of times, both practically and through drawing, it exemplifies that link to multiplication and repeated subtraction. And of course, the more they're doing, the more they're talking, the more they're active, they're going to remember more and make connections with previous learning. Capturing the draw in the maths book really supports the idea of maths books being revision guides, because they can look back at what they did. And of course, because they're being active and practical and they've got something to look at, then they can often talk and reason about what they know. Here's an example of a template that you can use to help structure this approach. Make it with card and laminate it, and then it can be reused. And I would recommend using an A3 size if you're going to do paired or small group work. This will help structure the learning over the week. You might start with everyone just building for a day or two, or maybe building and drawing. Whatever you choose to do, however you choose to organise your week, this provides a great structure and reminds children of all the aspects of the approach. Let's start with a build, and I'm going to focus on the question 26 divided by 5, and I'm going to show you a variety of different builds using different manipulatives, and then you can work out which one is best suited for you in your class or your child at home. Now we're going to use the question 26 divided by 5 for all of them. So what we've got here is a build of 26 divided by 5 with counters. And counters are a resource that children are very familiar with from Key Stage 1, and a lot of children, because they will be doing sharing as a group, as a division process, they will have something that they can share, so something that they can move one at a time. There are some drawbacks, however, when we get to larger questions, and that's the dividend. The dividend here, the number that we're dividing into, will be getting bigger. And of course, children have to accurately count the 26 or even bigger numbers in the future. And sometimes that can go a bit wrong because, of course, if they've got the wrong dividend, they're going to get the wrong quotient, which is the answer. So a little bit of advice if you're using counters, I would recommend encouraging children to organise them in an array. This is perfect for you quickly looking as well, so you can make a quick assessment, have they got the right number of counters, but also it links so beautifully to multiplication. It helps children recognise that they've used this model for multiplication, but they can also use it for division. And it gives children quite a lot of confidence that they can actually solve the answer. So what I've done here is I had a pile of 26 and I've organised them into rows of 5. I'm going to count how many rows of 5 I've got. And I can see that I have 5 rows of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have 1 remaining. And I like to use the double-sided counters because then the children can really highlight that 1 remaining. Next, we're going to look at the same question with a different build, this time using Numicon. And I've got to be honest, Numicon is my preferred choice because the beauty of Numicon is that you have the fixed pieces. So there's no getting the value wrong. Most children are able to make the dividend. Also, what Numicon does, because it's got a fixed 5, is it highlights the divisor, the number that we're dividing into the dividend. So 5 is our divisor, and it emphasises that 5's important. So there's two different ways you can do this. You can either put the Numicon pieces on top and see how many 5s you can fit in. And we can see that we can fit 5 5s in. And what we can see really clearly here is that one remaining. And there may be some children who sort of pick up the piece and see if it could fit. But again, it really highlights that one remaining. And I think that's really powerful for them to understand that we can get 5 groups of 5 in 26, but we're always going to have one remaining. The other option is simply to put it underneath. Not as visual perhaps for some children, but I know that some teachers use this model because it links very nicely to a bar model for the draw. This is the build for 26 divided by 5 using Cuisenaire, or number rods as they're sometimes called. So I've got this number track here which is really useful, and what it does is you can fit the Cuisenaire pieces in, as you can see. So I have made 26 using rods, and I'm now going to get my 5 rod. And we can do exactly the same that we did with Numicon, and once again it highlights that divisor, how many 5s in 26. And we can see by looking at our number track that there are 5 5s and 1 remaining. You could also put it underneath, because sometimes little fingers can't quite get that balance. Whatever works best and whatever they can see more clearly. And finally, let's have a look at base 10 and place value counters for the question 26 divided by 5. Now, if you're working with children who still very much need to see the remainder, this is a more tricky manipulative to use. And straight away, I'm sure you've noticed that this part isn't difficult. We can get a group of 5 there, and we can possibly even see our remainder. But then we have to use our knowledge to understand that there are 2 5s in 10, and there are 2 of those 10s. Now, you could exchange 10 10s for 10 1s and then put them into a group of 5. But at this early stage of understanding remainders, I wonder whether that might be taking it a little bit too far, but maybe have a try and see what you think. We've got the same idea here with Dean's or base 10, and we've got the same problem. So again, we can see our group of 5 and potentially our 1 remaining, quite simply. But again, we need to be able to divide those into 5s. The base 10 might be slightly easier than the place value counters because there are some markings on the base 10, and so children could count how many 5s they've got. So you can see there are a few challenges with using these manipulatives. However, one thing that it is good for is building towards using short division, because when we use short division we do partition the numbers into hundreds, tens and ones, which is exactly what these two manipulatives do. Modelling from the front of the classroom with manipulatives can be a bit tricky, so if you're struggling at all, then do check out MathSpot website. It has a whole variety of virtual maths manipulatives you can use in the classroom. And here are 2 examples, the double-sided counters and the Numicon number frames, as they call them. So I find it really useful to be able to do this from the front where everybody can see, and it's a very simple website to use. And also there's another one called Toy Theatre if you want to check it out. But I do recommend them, they make life so much easier. Let's think about the draw it. So it might have been that you spent the first couple of days just doing lots and lots of build it, giving children an opportunity to see remainders using the variety of manipulatives I've shown already. But then we need to think about how we can capture that understanding in the maths book and what that would look like. So it might be that you decide to do the draw it alongside a build it. It really is up to you, but over the week you want to move progressively from the build to the draw and make sure it matches. So here are some examples of what a draw could look like. Now if you've used Numicon or Cuisenaire, the bar model draw is really quite similar. We haven't made the shape of the Numicon 5s, but we are representing those Numicon 5s in parts, just like we always do with the bar model. Now you could maybe give them some bar model templates, perhaps with this part missing, the intervals missing, and children could actually place the Numicon onto the bar model, the empty template, perhaps on A3, and see how many 5s they've got, and then they could transfer that idea straight over into their maths book. So you could use a bar model. It also works really well for Cuisenaire, so it looks really similar. I wanted to just mention the empty number line because lots of people use the empty number line for a draw, and it really does have its place. All you need to think about is what were they actually doing for the build and how does it match that? So it might be that when they're building, perhaps with counters, and they're taking 5 away each time and putting it into a group of 5, you could link that well to this taking 5 number line. There are a few things to think about when you're using a number line, however, and the conventions of a number line. I really like to call them empty number lines because they're meant to be about decision making. We do need to do some modelling, but then we do want the children to think about which method would suit them better. So for this one in red, what I've done is I've started at 0 and I'm counting up how many 5s until I get to 25 actually, and then I'm recognising I can't find another group of 5 and I have 1 remaining. So for lots of children that makes sense because it matches with the 5 times table. With this model, we are highlighting repeated subtraction as a form of division, and we would start usually at the top and subtract 5 away each time until we get to 0, and we use that 0 as a really important teaching point if we use this method. The challenge with this is it doesn't lend itself so well to the times tables because we start on a number that isn't in the times tables. So just have a think about which one would work and whether you'd like children to explore both of them. But, I really like the idea of an empty number line and children making choices. But if possible, can it match the build they've been doing? So these draws would be captured in the maths books, and this would give children a memory, which is really important, of the maths they did when they did it in a concrete form. And here are some more examples of a draw it for 26 divided by 5. So if your child or your children in your class were using Numicon and found that really useful, what I've done before is give them a blank tens Numicon template. So you can buy ones like this, but I kind of mimic that idea in their maths book without the colour. And then what they can do, I tend to get them to draw the shape on, depends on the age of the child and their skills at doing that type of thing, rather than colour it in, because it can take quite a while if they colour it in. But they could plot the Numicon pieces onto that empty number line, and that would really reflect well what they were doing when they were doing the build. I mentioned the challenge of place value counters, and I just wanted to show you how perhaps I would utilise that if I wanted to use it. So we could with this number, now bearing in mind 26 divided by 5 lends itself to this beautifully, I have drawn the place value counters and then I'm using a part whole method to model those two 5s that make the 10, and that's really quite a good idea because lots of Key Stage 1 experience will mean they are very familiar with this. So it is possible to use the place value counters when the numbers lend themselves to it, I think is the best advice. And this would be how I would capture the draw in the book. So you've done a bit of build and you've done a bit of draw, or the children have, I should say. And all the way through we want to encourage that maths conversation. So we want them to say it. And you could be teaching them the language of divisor, which is the number you're dividing by, dividend, your number of the total that you've got, the number you're dividing into, and the quotient, which is the answer. You can also make sure that they're saying, just like they did for the addition and subtraction, full sentences and talking to each other about what they find out. And we'd be looking for them to use the word groups and remaining and just speaking in full sentences and articulating what they're doing so that we know that they really understand. The build it, draw it, write it, say it approach lends itself so well to reasoning because what it does is it gives children that concrete experience and it gives them a hook to put their learning on. So by doing the maths and talking about the maths and seeing the structures behind the maths, it gives them more confidence to talk about what they can see. And as an adult, you can really help to prompt the child's understanding by using this kind of approach. So if I was teaching 26 divided by 5, I can choose my next question really carefully to maximise their understanding. And this is called systematic variation. And there's lots of examples of this in the White Rose and the NCETM materials and Inspire Maths, etc. So what we would do is, to be systematic, we would put our next question to be 27 divided by 5 because we want to link what they understand about 26 divided by 5 with the next question. To give them a question like 57 divided by 9 straight after would mean taking everything off, starting again, and not confirming that learning so well. So I would be saying to the children, first of all, a lot of children will just take all of that off and want to start again. And actually in the classroom, I might let them do that, and then I might stop in a mini plenary and say, someone's coming up with a good idea. What are you doing? because what we actually want them to do is just realise that they have to increase the value by 1 more and put 1 more Numicon piece on there. And we can see quite clearly that the remainder is now 2. And we can have a conversation about how it's 1 more remaining and why they think there is 1 more remaining than this question. And so, using that systematic variation approach, it comes under the intelligent practice umbrella, I'd go to 28 divided by 5. And so very quickly, children will add 1 and see that there are 3 remaining. I might at this point say, which question do you think I'm going to do next? And loads of children will straight away say, you're going to do 29 divided by 5 and the remainder is going to be 4 straight away. So it's a really good approach, and there's lots of questions and ways you can get them to think more deeply. So I might say to them, okay, so 30 divided by 5, is that going to be 6 remainder 5? And look for them to say yes, because some children will say yes at that point. But from doing that, we're able to then use the Numicon again and build that extra 5 on, and we'll be able to see really clearly that that isn't the case. If you've got 5 remaining, then you've got another group of 5. And this really helps children understand at what point the remainder ends. So lots of work around questions like this. I might then say to them, right, so who can give me a similar question which would have a remainder of 1? And I'd let children hopefully come up with the idea that, well, 31 remainder 5 would give us a remainder 1. And then we'd say, well, 36 divided by 5 will give us a remainder of 1, and we can start to pattern seek. So all of these types of conversations really help the depth of understanding, and that's why I'm such a big fan of this approach. That's how I would use the build it, draw it, write it, say it approach to division with remainders. I hope you found it useful. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and if you hit the bell for notifications, you'll know when I've uploaded my next primary maths video. For more maths fun, head over to my Facebook page, Curious Maths. Thanks for watching.